Hi, it's another week, I would say. Lately, I wasn't able to read a lot due to a lot of bad mismanagement, and I guess more work, less reading, I would say. And this week, I decided to go back a bit and spend some quality time reading. It's a good day. Optimization versus learning. Engineers, designers, and marketeers are all skilled at optimization. For example, direct marketers are experienced at split testing value proposition by spending a different offer or to smaller group of customers so that they can measure difference in response rate of the two groups. Engineers, of course, are skilled at improving a product's performance, just as designers are talented at making product easier to use. All these activities in a well-run traditional organization offer incremental benefit for incremental effort. As long as we are executing the plan well, hard work yield results. However, these tools for product improvement do not work the same way for startup. If you are building the wrong thing, optimizing the product or its marketing will not yield significant results. A startup has to measure progress against a high bar. Evidence that a sustainable business can be built around its product or service. That is a standard that can be assessed only if a startup has made clear, tangible predictions ahead of time. In the absence of these predictions, product and strategy decisions are far more difficult and time consuming. I often see this in my consulting practice. I've been called in many times to help a startup that feel that its engineering team isn't working hard enough. When I met these teams, there are always improvements to be made and I recommend them. But invariably, invariability, the problem is not lack of development talent, energy or effort. Cycle after cycle, the team is working hard, but business is not seeing results. Managers trained in a traditional model draw the logical conclusion: our team is not working hard, not working effectively, or not working efficiently. Thus, the downward cycle began. The product development team variety tries to build a product according to the specification it is receiving from the creative or business leadership. When good results are not forthcoming, business leaders assume that any discrepancy between what was planned and what was built is the cause and try to specify the next iteration in greater detail. As the specification get more detailed, the planning process slows down, batch size increases, and feedback is delayed. If the board of director or CFO is involved ماما شغل صاحبه involved as a stakeholder, it doesn't take long for personal change to follow. Okay. Even like after a few years, a team that's even like after a few years, a team that sells product to large media companies invite you to help them as a consultant because they were considered by the engineer. However, the fault was not in the engineers. It was in the process the whole company was using to make decisions. They had customers but did not know them very well. They were diluted with features requested from customers. The initial sales team and the business leadership every new insight became the emergency that had to be addressed immediately. As a result, long-term projects were hampered by consistent implementation. Even worse, the team had no clear sense of whether any of the changes they were making mattered to customers, despite the constant tuning and tweaking. The businesses that were constantly mediocre. Learning milestones prevent this negative spiral by emphasizing a more likely possibility. Learning milestones prevent this negative spiral by emphasizing a more likely possibility. The company is executing with discipline, a plan that does not make sense. The innovation accounting framework makes it clear when the company is stuck and needs to change direction. In the example above, early in the company's life, a product development team was incredibly productive because the company founders had identified a large unmet need in the target market. The initial product, while fluid, was popular with early adopters, adding the major feature that customers asked for seems to work wonders. As the early adopters spread the early world about the innovation far and wide, but unanswered were other lurking questions. Did the company have a working engine of growth? Was this early success related to the daily work of a product development team? In most cases, the answer was no. Success was driven by decisions team had made in the past. None of its current initiatives were having any impact. But this was obscure because the company's growth metrics were all up and to the right. As we will see in a moment, this is a common danger. Companies of any size that have a working engine of growth can come to rely on the wrong kind of metric to guide their actions. This is what tempts managers to resort to the usual bag of success threat. Theater, tickets, last minute and highlights, channel suffer, and whiz bag dinners, and the disparate attempts to make the closing of the paper and the energy invested in success theaters and use energy that before years to help with sustainable business. I call it traditional number years to get started around elimination of economic and the form of sustainable Okay, vanity metrics award of caution. To see the danger of vanity metric to clearly let's return once more to the early days of IMVU. Take a look at the following graph, which is from the same era in IMVU history, so that growth earlier in the chapter. It covers the same time period as the cohort style graph on page 122. In fact, it is from the same board presentation. This graph shows the traditional growth metric for IMVU. So far, total registered user and total paying customer. The growth ventures graph looks almost the same. From this viewpoint, things look much more exciting. That's why I call these metric. They give rosiest possible picture. You will see traditional hockey stick graph, the ideal in a rapid growth company. As long as you focus on the top line number, signing up more customers, and increase of the overall revenue, you will be forgiven for thinking this product development team is making great progress. The company growth engine is working. Each month it is able to acquire customers and has a positive return on investment. The excess revenue from this customer is reinvested. The next month is acquiring more. That is where the growth is coming from. But think back to the same data presented in a cohort style IMBU is adding a new customer, but it's not improving the yield on the new growth. This engine is turning, but the effort to tune the engine are not bearing much fruit. From a traditional graph alone, you cannot tell whether IMView is on the pace to build sustainable business. You certainly can't tell anything about the efficiency of the entrepreneurial team behind it. Innovation Innovation accounting will not work if a startup is being misled by these kind of vanity metrics, the gross number of customers and so on. The alternative is the kind of metrics we use to judge the business and our learning milestones, what I call actionable metric. Actionable metric versus vanity metric. Okay. Okay. Actionable metric versus vanity method. To get a better sense of the importance of good metrics, let's look at a company called Grok, Groket. Its founder, Farput Nabi, spent a decade working as a teacher at two large for-profit education companies, Princeton Review and Kaplan, helping students preparing for standardized tests such as the GMAT, LSAT, and SAT. His engaging classroom style won applause from his students and promotions from his supervisors, superiors. He was honored with the Princess Review National Teacher of the Year award, but Farb was frustrated with the traditional teaching method used by those companies, teaching 6 to 9 hours per day to thousands of students. He had many opportunities to experiment with the new approaches. Over time, Farab concluded that the traditional lecture model of education, with its one-to-many instructional approach, was inadequate for his students. He set out to develop a superior approach using combination of teacher-led lectures, individual homework, and group study. In particular, Farab was fascinated by how effective the students peer driven learning method was for his students. When students could help each other, they benefit in two ways. First, they could get customized instruction from here who was much less intimidating than a teacher. Second, they could reinforce their learning by teaching it to others. Over time, Farab's classes become increasingly social and successful. As this unfolded, Farab felt more and more that his physical presence in the classroom was less important. He made an important connection. I have this social learning model in my classroom. There is all the social stuff going on the web. His idea was to bring social peer-to-peer learning to people who could not afford the expensive classes from Kaplan or Princeton Review, or even more expensive private tutor. From this, thought in Crocky was born. Farhab explained, whether you're studying for a SAT or you're studying for algebra, you study in one of three ways. You spend some time with experts, you spend some time on your own, and you spend some time with peers. Crop offers these three same formats of studying. What we do is we apply technology and algorithm to optimize these three forms. Farab is the classic entrepreneur visionary. He he recounts his original insight this way. Let's forget educational design up until now. Let's forget what's possible and just design learning with today's students and today's technology in mind. There were plenty of multi-billion-dollar organizations in the education space, and I don't think they were innovating in any way that we needed them to, and I didn't think we needed them anymore. To me, it's really all about the students, and I didn't feel like the students were being served as well as they could. Today, Krook offers many different educational products, but in the beginning, Farah followed a lean approach. Grok built a momentum viable product which was simply Farah teaching test be a popular online web conference tooling WebEx. He built no custom software, no new technology. He simply attempted to bring his new teaching approach to. Since you've been gone, I can say to the I'm sounding on, yeah, yeah. Thanks to you. No, no, no. That's a good. That's really nice. Okay, students via the internet. News about a new kind of private tutoring spread quickly, and within a few months, Farab was making a decent living teaching online with a monthly revenue of 10,000 to 15,000. But like many entrepreneurs with ambition, Farab didn't build his MVP just to make a living. He had a vision of more collaborative, more effective kind of teaching for students everywhere. With his initial traction, he was able to raise money from some of the most prestigious investors in Silicon Valley. When I first met Farab, his company was already on the first track to success. They had raised revenue capital from well-regarded investors, had built an awesome team, and were fresh off an impressive debt at the Silicon Valley famous startup companies. Even like they were extremely process oriented and disciplined. Their product development followed a rigorous version of the agile development methodology known as extreme programming, described below, thanks to the Extreme programming thanks to their partnership with San Francisco-based company called Primal Labs. Their early project was however by the first alternate protocol. There was only one problem: they were not seeing sufficient growth in the use of the product by customers. Growth as an excellent case study because its problems were not a matter of failure of execution or discipline. Following standard agile practice, Crockett work proceeded in a series of sprints or 1 month iteration cycle. Okay. For each sprint, Farab would prioritize the work to be done that month by writing a series of user stories. I have a really good idea. Let me give me a second. I want you to help me design a bi-weekly product prioritization process for a project called Voca for learning English, and I want to share this framework with a very junior product owner. So I wanted to explain first what does bi-weekly process planning mean, how this could be, what are the steps to get this done, how to prioritize, how to share the result, how to communicate this with the dev team, how to communicate this with the business, and how to groom it, how to write user stories, like in a very simple, minimalist way. And let's take example of a product that is Duolingo alike, just like Duolingo, but it's for Iraqis who are busy, right? And it's going one on one. So let's take one feature as example, which is developing a chatbot that reminds customers, learners about their, let's say, next class, or share learning bites with them, right? Just like syncing, because it's a web based, syncing the web base in a Telegram, so people can stay connected. Just use as an example, take a small part of it, and just use it as an example to demonstrate. Again, I want things to be easy and Notion friendly, because I will just put this as a Notion for her as a process and SOP to go over whenever she wants to prioritize. And I want her to set up bi-weekly meeting to share the progress, and maybe weekly meeting with stakeholders, right? And how to think of it, how to write user stories for the dev team. This is how I manipulate Google ChatGPT to give me results. Now just help me draft a communication method with the link, Notion link to this processes, and I want Sarah to go over it and give me a feedback at the end of today. And to the team, it's very important to go over it and review and share any updates or any edits on it. ايه طفي يا حبيبي، شكرا. Woo! وينذر الذين قالوا اتخذ الله ولدا ما لهم به من علم ولا لآبائهم كبرت كلمة تخرج من أفواههم إن يقولون إلا كذبا فلعلك باخع نفسك على آثارهم إن لم يؤمنوا بهذا الحديث أسفا إنا جعلنا ما على الأرض زينة لها لنبلوهم أيهم أحسن عملا وإنا لجاعلون ما عليها صعيدا جرزا أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا إذ أوى الفتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا فضربنا على آذانهم في الكهف سنين عددا ثم بعثناهم لنعلم أي الحزبين أحصى لما لبثوا أمدا نحن نقص عليك نبأهم بالحق إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى وربطنا على قلوبهم إذ قاموا فقالوا ربنا رب السماوات والأرض لن ندعو من دونه إلها لقد قلنا إذا شططا هؤلاء قوم اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين فمن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا وإذ اعتزلتموهم وما يعبدون إلا الله فأووا إلى الكهف ينشر لكم ربكم من رحمته فأووا إلى الكهف ينشر لكم ربكم من رحمته ويهيئ لكم من أمركم مرفقا وترى الشمس إذا طلعت تزاور عن كهفهم ذات اليمين وإذا غربت تقرضهم Just I got inspired from this monthly planning or bi-weekly planning. It's nice. I really like it. ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وتحسبهم أيقاظا وهم رقود ونقلبهم ذات اليمين وذات الشمال Okay, his company was okay, and there is only problem there was not sufficient. Okay, following standard agile practice, work proceeded in a series of sprints or 1 month iteration cycles. For each sprint, Farah would prioritize the work to be done that month by writing a series of user stories, a technique taken from agile development. Instead of writing a specification for a new feature that described in a technical term, Farab would write a story that described the feature from point of view of the customer. That story helped keep the engineers focused on the customer's perspective throughout the development process. Each feature was expressed in a clean language in terms everyone could understand, whether they had a technical background or not. Again, following standard agile practice, Farab was free to reprioritize his stories at any time. As he learned more about what customer wanted, he could move things around in a product backlog. The queue of stories yet uh, each feature was expressed in a plain language in terms everyone can understand whether they had a technical background or not. Again, following strong agile practice, Farab was free to reprioritize these stories at any time. As he learned more about what customer wanted, he could move things around in a project panel. The queue of stories yet to be built. The only limit on this ability to change directions was that he could not interrupt any task that was in progress. Fortunately, the stories were written in such a way that the batch size of work were written in such a way that the batch size of work, which I discussed more in chapter 9, was only a day or two. This system is called agile development for a good reason. The teams that employ it are able to change direction quickly, stay light on their feet, and be highly responsive to change in the business requirement of the product owner. The manager of the process, in this case, Farah, who is responsible for prioritizing the stories, how did the team feel at the end of each sprint? They consistently delivered the new product feature. They would collect feedback from customers and in the form of encounters and interviews that indicate that at least some customers liked the new feature. This was always certain amount of data that shows improvement. Perhaps the total number of customers was increasing. That meant perhaps perhaps the total number of customers increasing, the total number of questions answered by students was going up, and the number of returning customers was increasing as well. However, I sensed that Farab and his team were left with the lingering doubt of the company overall progress was in the was in the was an increase in their number actually caused by their development efforts, or could it be due to other factors such as mentions of Krog in the press when I met the team when I went with a further when I met the team, I asked them this simple question: how do you know that the fertilization decisions that Farab is making actually making sense? Their answer: that's not true. That's not our department. Farab makes decisions, we execute them. Okay, that's not our department. Farah makes decision, we execute it. You could like at that time, Korak was focused on just you like at that time. At that time, Korak was focused on one customer segments, prospective business school students who were studying for the GM80. The product allows students to engage in a one-line study session with fellow students who were studying for the same exam. The product was working. The students who completed their studying abroad achieved significantly higher scores than they had before, but the Crockett team was struggling with the age-old startup problem. How do we know which features to prioritize? How can we get more customers to sign up and pay? How can we get the word about our product? I put this question to Farah. How confident are you that you are making the right decisions in terms of establishing priorities? Like most startup founders, he was looking at the available data and making the best educated guesses he could. But this but this left a lot of room for ambiguity and doubt. Farah believed in this vision truthfully and completely. Yet he was starting to question whether his company was on pace to realize that vision. The product improved every day, but Farah wanted to make sure these improvements mattered to customers. I believe he deserves a lot of credit for realizing this. Unlike many visionaries who clinged to their original vision no matter what, Farah was willing to put his vision to the test. Farah worked hard to sustain his team's belief that Farah was destined for success. He was worried that moral he was worried the moral would suffer if anyone thought that the person steering the ship was uncertain about which way. Farah worked hard to sustain his team belief that Farah was destined for success. He was worried that morale would suffer if anyone thought that the person steering the ship was uncertain about which direction to go. Farah himself wasn't sure if his team would embrace a true learning culture. After all, after all, After all, this was part of a grand bargain of agile development. Engineers to adapt the product to the business constantly changing requirements but are not responsible for quality of those business decisions. Agile is efficient system of development from the point of view of the developers. It allows them to stay focused on creating features and technical designs. An attempt to introduce the need to learn into the process could undetermine productivity. Lean manufacturing faced similar problem when it was introduced in factories. Managers were used to focusing on the utilization rate of each machine. Factories were designed to keep machine running at full capacity as much of the time as possible, viewed from perspective of the machine that is efficient, but from a point of view of productivity of the entire factory, it's wildly inefficient at times. While they say system theory that which optimize one part of the system need necessarily underestimate the system as a whole. With Farah and his team didn't realize how the code process was being measured by priority metric, the total number of customers and the total number of question answered. That was what causing his team to spin its wheel. Those metrics gave the team the sensation of forward motion, even metric gave the team a sensation of forward even though the company was making progress. What's interesting is how closely parameter follows the superficial aspects of lean startup learning milestone. They shipped an early product and established from baseline metric. They had relatively short iteration, each of which was judged by its ability to improve customer metrics. However, because the group was using the wrong kind of method, the startup was not genuinely improving. Was not improving. Farab was frustrated in his efforts to learn from customer feedback. In every cycle, the type of metric his team was focused on would change. One month they look at the gross usage numbers, another month the registration number, and so on. These metrics would go up and down seemingly on their own. He claimed to draw a clear cause and effect and characterizing work correctly in such an environment is extremely challenging. Farah could have asked his data analyst to investigate. Farah could have asked his data analyst to investigate a particular question. For example, when we shipped feature X, did it affect customer behavior? Mama, worry. Oh, when we shipped X to feature X, did it affect customer behavior? But but that would have required tremendous time and effort. When exactly did Future X ship? Which customer were exposed to it? Was anything else launched around the same time? Were there seasonal factors that might be skewing the data? Finding these answers would have required parsing reams and reams of data. The answer often would come weeks after the question has been asked. In the meantime, the team would have moved to a new characterization and new question that need urgent attention. Compared to a lot of stuff, the pro team had a huge advantage. They were tremendously disciplined. A disciplined team may apply the wrong methodology but can shift gears quickly once it discovers its error. Most important, a disciplined team can experiment with its own working style and draw meaningful conclusions. That's interesting. So, maybe she. صح. شو تبدأ هذا الطريق؟ تروح زيارة. ها؟ بروح سنة ونرجع. ايش؟ بس أنا زيارة. ناخذ سيارة زوار ونرجع. زوار سنة ولا زيارة؟ أيام. ها؟ هاي نروح ها على السيارة ولا على سنة قصدي. Cohort and split tests. Okay, cohort split test. Group change the metric Change the metric they use to evaluate success in two ways. Instead of looking at a gross metric, Rock switched to cohort-based metric, and instead of looking for cause and effect relationship after the fact, Rook would launch each new feature as a true split test experiment. A split test experiment is one of which different versions of product are offered to customers at the same time by observing the change in behavior between the two groups. One can make an inference about the impact of the different variations. This technique was pioneered by direct mail advertising. For example, consider a company that sent customers a catalog of products to buy, such as lamps and quartet parallel. If you wanted to test catalog design, you could send a new version of it to 50% of the customers. For example, you could send a new version of it 50
اه عمال
of
جان
it to
فون زي
50% of the customers and send. I'm reading. I have stream. It's going live. Huh? ليش؟ ليش تشتغل؟ يعني شو ليش؟
اه سجلتها لقيت عرفت اشتريتها
شو تسوي بي؟
11
بس عرفتين يعني شو تسوي؟
هي
ليش
كنت
بس
جبت
تشتري؟
16
ها؟
كنت جبت 16 وين؟ اي ماما حروح اشتري 16 واجي حتى راح ازور
انت ما تقدر تدرس.
عندي صودا اشتري بيضة والجوع
روح على المال اشتري.
مش كسر كله
ما اريد والله ولد عندي اقرا.
ها ماما ها اوكي
لا حكي ما اريد وين شو سويت 16
ما اقدر اشتري لك ما ادري
والله ما اريد شو سويت 16
بعدين الاثنين دقيقة حرامات راح ياكل اشتري
عندي 16 بس عندي زرقاء
هذا زود رحت من مكة المفروض طلعت فلوس
رحت فيها هي بس الأردن لبستها يا روح ندردش انا بس زرقاء وانت بس بيض
انا بس بيضة راح حبيبي حبيبي
روح تجيب حليب وتعال.
ها يوم
You can send it to 50% of the customer and send the outcome catalog to 50% to assure the scientific result. Both catalog would contain identical product, and the only difference would be the change. You could assure a scientific results. Both catalog would contain. Okay, to figure out if the new design was effective, all you would have to keep track of sales figure for both groups of customers. This technique is something called A/B testing. After the practice of assigning letters names to each variation, although split testing often thought as a marketing specific or even direct marketing specific practice, Lean Startup incorporates it directly into product development. These changes led to an immediate change and Farab's understanding of the business. Split testing often uncovers surprising things. For example, many features that make the product better in the eyes of engineers and designers have no impact on customers' behavior. These changes led to an immediate change in Farab's understanding of business. Split testing often uncovers surprising things. For example, many features that make the product better in the eyes of engineers and designers have no impact on customers' behavior. This was the case at Korg as it has been in every company. I have seen adopt this structure, although working with splitters seems to be more difficult because it requires extreme accounting and metric to keep track of violations. It almost always saves a tremendous amount of time in the long run by eliminating work that does not matter to customers. Split testing also helps teams refine their understanding of what customers want and don't want. Crockett's teams constantly added new ways for their customers to interact with each other in the hope that these social communication tools would increase the product's volume. Inherent in those efforts was the belief that customers desired more communication during their study. When split testing revealed the extra feature did not change customer behavior, it called that belief into question. The question inspired the team to seek deeper understanding of what customer really wanted. They brainstormed a new idea for product experimentation experiments that have more impact. In fact, many of these ideas were not new. They had simply been overlooked because the company was focused on building social root. As a result, Croc tested as an intensive solo studying mode, complete with the questions and gain saying that students could have the choice of studying by themselves or other just as Phillips original classroom. This proved extremely effective for the discipline of subject testing. The company might not have had this realization. In fact, over time, within dozens of tests, it became clear that the key to students' engagement was to offer them a combination of social and solo features. Students preferred having a choice of how to study. ماما الموارد ده صبيتي اه اه كلش مهم. كلش مهم. سو راح نروح بس ساعة راح نروح وين؟ لا وين ده اقرا بس شو وقت يعني بس ساعة ماما بس ساعة تجي عمان اه مو علي تمرين اليوم بالأربعة ايه ما نلحق نرجع قبل الأربعة ما نلحق نرجع قبل الأربعة
اوكي يعني مو بين ساعه تخلص
5:30 هيك
نرجع بالساعة.
شو رايك نسوي؟ يعني بالخمسة ونص نروح؟
إيه.
تلوتي؟ هو الطريق نص ساعة.
بالكامل.
ايه
10 دقائق.
شنو تشوف ويز؟ هاي ويز، لا بس دقيقة بس دقيقة بس دقيقة.
شو المشكلة؟ ترى عارفنا قديم.
رأيتها ثواني. واحد 30 دقيقة. 31 دقيقة.
مستحيل. هذا ويز.
اوه
ويز بس تقول لي ويز ولا لا؟
اي ويز.
اي هذا هسه ستيج.
انا ضل اسوي هالسوالف.
اي نص ساعة شو مشكلة؟ لا شو تبي اسمه؟
38 دقيقة.
هسه وش تبي؟
يعني اذا نروح بالخمسة ونص على الاقل نرجع بالتسعة 8.
8. حتى انا اروح هذا الساعة 9.
حسب تروح وتعال، انا هسه راح اخابر هذا شوف اقدر اجله.
لا شوف الرقم يا ست.
يقول لك Kaban, following the lean manufacturing principle of Kaban, or capacity consistent, Crockett changed the product prioritization process under the new system. User stories were not considered complete under they led to validated learning. These stories could be cataloged as being one of four states of development: the product backlog, actively being built, done, feature complete from a tech point of view, or in the process of being validated. Validated was defined as knowing whether the story was a good idea to have done in the first place. This validation usually would come in the form of split test showing a change in customer behavior, but also might include customer interview or surveys. The Kaban rule permitted only so many stories in each of the four states. As the stories flow from one state to the other, the buckets fill up. Once a bucket becomes full, it cannot accept more stories. Only when the story has been done. What? The Kaban rule permitted only so many stories in each of the four states. As the story flow from one state to the other, the bucket fill up. When a bucket becomes full, it cannot accept more stories. Only when a story has been validated can then be removed to cap on board. If the validation fails, it turns out the story to is a bad idea. The relevant feature is removed from products. So backlog ABC, no bucket can contain more than three projects at a time. Okay, work on A begins D and E are developed for validation. packet and publish small data. So, wait, ABC. So, A, B, C, D, E, F, okay. So, work on evidence. D, and E, are publish, avoid validation. So, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, which if Thus, stories could be thus stories could be cataloged as for instance as the government upon particularly what damage and other. International behavior usually it can be form of symbols change on the same stories in each of the four states are the stories from one state to another. The buckets for the bucket answer except one stories and one only a story has one narrated and it will be okay. Multiple systems افتح افتح يقول لك stories could be cataloged as being okay beneficial ثلاثة okay let's see what this trying to understand and how identity only sharing stories of each of the first states as a story of life from one state to the other the bucket fills up once the bucket becomes full it cannot accept anymore except one story. Only when a story has validated it can be removed from the cover by the validation files and it turns out the story story cannot be removed from the cover of the validation files and it returns out the story as a teacher's so now we have backlog which has A and B and C and progress D. So the work on A begins, and D and E are in development. D and E are in development. F waits for building. F again validated. D and E await validation. Okay. D and E await validation. A, I didn't really understand this. I really didn't. اه ممكن تنصي شوية. الله والديك. يقول لك this process is showing the page describe Kavana's prioritization of the system of purpose to ensure teams only start new work based on their capacity. So the team only works on a few things at a time and avoids overload. This diagram has three snapshots. Backlog and no bucket container. This is called WIP limit, work and progress limit. Okay. That's nice. I really like this one. First diagram, starting work. Okay, meaning team start working on A, moving from backlog to in progress. Okay, start. Okay, start. The way they. Start new. Okay, so that okay. The diagrams of progress. No bucket can contain. Okay. So here, team start working on A, moving it from backlog to in progress. Okay. D and E are currently being developed. Okay, F is waiting for validation. Second diagram, more work moves. Backlog G, okay, new backlog, meaning G got validated. G got built and validated. Okay, meaning F got validated. Freeing space and build, okay. So D and E and A move from progress to build. The new task HGI enter backlog, okay. B and C move to in progress. Interesting. Tree diagram. Okay, okay. Helps you prioritize the right work because you can't start new items unless downstream. Okay. Prevent overload. Highlight bottleneck if a validation is slow. The entire line stops and you must fix it. Improve delivery speed. In plain text, don't start something new until you finish what already started. Keep every stage flowing. When one stage gets full, stop and fix the bottleneck. This is a sense of Kanban and how it's supposed to effective product prioritization and works until if you want. Okay. It's not very clear and it's kind of it feels very repetitive to be honest. I have implemented some refining organization starting with all the bucket and moving it on the done bucket until it's not possible to start anymore. Teams that are used to measuring their productivity narrowly by the number of stories they are developing fear stuck. The only way to start work on a new feature is to investigate some of the stories that are done but haven't been validated. That often requires non-engineering effort, talking to customers, looking at split test data, and pretty soon everyone gets the hang of it. The process acquires in fit and starts at first. Engineering may finish a big batch of work, followed by extensive testing and validation. As engineers look for ways to increase their productivity, they start to realize that if they include the validation exercise from the beginning, the whole team can be more productive. For example, why build a new feature that is not of any split test experiment? It may save you time in a short run, but it will take more time later to test. During the validation phase, the same logic applies to the story that an engineer doesn't understand. Under the old system, he or she would just build it and find out later what it was for. In the new system, that behavior is clearly counterproductive without a clear hypothesis. How Without a clear hypothesis, how can a story ever be validated? When we saw behavior IMV2, I once saw a junior engineer face down a senior executive over a relatively minor change. The engineer insisted that the new feature be split tested just like any other. His peers backed him up. It was considered absolutely obvious to all features that should be routinely tested no matter who is commissioning them. Embracingly, all often I was executive in the question. To solve the process lays the foundation for healthy culture when where ideas are evaluated by merit and not job title. Most important teams working in this system began to measure their productivity according to validated learning, not in terms of predictions of new features. Could do prediction of new features. Hypothesis testing at graphics. Mm, they decide based on the I guess it was good reading for today. That's it. See you next week, next time, tomorrow morning.